We're live. My guests today are Ivan and Metodi of Nolus. They are respectively co-founder and DeFi strategist at Nolus. Nolus is a Cosmos SDK chain offering DeFi leasing. It's an exciting new DeFi product. What's interesting is that it allows degens and other, non-degenerate people to do under-collateralized lending. Beyond that, it does also has a number of other DeFi products that they're starting to build. Today, we're going to be discussing the mechanics of the protocol, also the product and the roadmap. I'm also dying to find out why they think DeFi adoption relies on centralized services. Before we get started, make sure to hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and subscribe to get notified when I go live every week. And remember that none of what we discuss here on the Interrupt is investment advice. I'd also like to disclose that I am an advisor to Nolus. If you enjoy this content, please consider sticking with us. We're live on FMOS, Quicksilver, on Osmosis, and on Juno. Just look for Interop in the active set. My guests, Ivan and Metodi, are coming up next right here on the Interop. Hey guys, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having us, Seth.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to diving deep here because, on the Interop, we do a lot of technical content. We do a lot of protocol stuff, but we haven't done a whole lot of products. And this is an interesting DeFi product that I think could be interesting for the Cosmos space, obviously, as there are more and more DeFi protocols being built on Cosmos. I'm interested in understanding also how Nolus, how you see it interoperating and interacting with the broader Cosmos DeFi ecosystem. But before we do that, maybe just tell us a bit about yourselves and what your background and how you became to be working on this project.
Yeah, well, let me start here. I'm Ivan. I'm one of the co-founders here at Nolus. From, let's say, more than 15 years, I've been working in a Web2 financial company, and I have a lot of background in marketing automation, digital marketing, and from, let's say, the last maybe 5 years, I've been doing product development, and this is my current role here at Nolus. So this is my personal background. I've been deep into crypto since 2017. Then I was involved in one ICO project, and which kind of light my fire for crypto and so what decentralization can do to not only money, but however to generally shift the focus of centralized entities and create a democracy in terms of I don't know, you name the industry, but I guess the impact is enormous.
Hey everyone, so yeah, I'm Metodi. I'm the DeFi strategist of Nolus. Basically, what I'm doing here at the team is things such as technical documentation, infrastructure support. Basically, I'm helping out with whatever I can, as much as my expertise allows it. I joined this team right after I graduated from university, so it's like my first full-time job, so to speak. I got into crypto a bit later. So it was around the beginning of 2021, but I really had the chance to dive deep into DeFi and loved researching about various kinds of protocols, took part in various kinds of ecosystems, and basically at Nolus I'm doing what I would be either way doing in my spare time, I guess. So that's the great part about it.
Cool. No, thanks for coming on. And, it seems like you guys have a really solid team building this product. So I'd like to talk a little bit about Credissimo and, that fintech company, that sort of Web2 fintech company that you mentioned, and what it is and what it's been doing and how it started pivoting into doing more DeFi and crypto products. Because I believe it's also behind, or at least it's affiliated with another lending platform or something like that.
Yeah, actually, the big part of the team that currently are working on Nolus, we met at Credissimo. We worked there together for many years, and the company helped us spun this idea and bring it almost to life. So this is the actual involvement. But however, there are separate entities, meaning that Credissimo is a Web2 lender that has a regulated business in Eastern Europe as well as in South America. And Nolus is something that it's just spun off part of the team that actually helped grow Credissimo. So yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so there is no like actual tangible relationship now. It's sort of like a spin-off from the team. Got it. So something I mentioned in your intro earlier is that you guys were saying before the show that you think that DeFi adoption comes through centralized services. Can you expand a little bit on that and how that thesis fits within the vision for Nolus?
Yeah, sure. So as you know, currently, like many hardcore DeFi fans are strictly against any centralization factors in DeFi. So they want everything to be fully non-custodial. Like the smart contracts don't have any centralized elements and are basically open and free to use by anyone. But one thing that probably many people don't consider is that DeFi is still in its early stages, right? So there are still many people who have yet to use anything crypto related, let alone DeFi, NFTs, and all these non-custodial wallets. So all of those people, they have more or less habits that are, you could say, different from the habits of even semi-experienced DeFi users. So you in our opinion, you need elements in your system that cater to the needs of those people as well, so that they would be able to join. And by having those people join, naturally they join with liquidity, and this is of course what might be necessary even to shape new products in DeFi. So if you think about it from that point of view, it's centralization really matters to DeFi, and it's not all bad.
Yeah, I mean it is until your platform collapses, but yeah, of course, like a lot of people, I think probably. I mean, I don't know exactly, right? Like what are I feel like I should know this, but like how many people are using crypto through centralized exchanges versus DeFi? I think like FTX probably played a big role in moving more of those people towards DeFi, hopefully. But yeah, the on-ramps that centralized finance currently provide and the user experience, for the moment at least, is in many cases much better than the user experience. Like you really do have to eat glass when using DeFi, especially if you're doing more complex things. Thankfully, that's getting better, and I think that teams like yourselves that have a lot of experience in building solid products in Web 2 are going to bring that experience over into Web 3. The thing also is that protocols are getting better, developer tooling is getting better all around. Those things are getting much more easier to use. We have better custody solutions. We have better, just better tooling around like, web UIs and stuff like that. So we've seen like a tangible improvement in the user experience over the last couple of years, and it's only going to get better. So yeah, let's talk about Nolus a little bit. So Nolus is a DeFi leasing protocol. That's the way the website describes it. Can you explain what that is for those who might not be? Because I mean, like most people think of a lease, they think, well, I'm gonna like lease a car or something, right? So I'm like, essentially, paying to have access to this car until I have to give it back or something like that. But how does that apply to finance and specifically to DeFi?
Yeah, actually, the whole concept of Nolus came out from the general idea of how leasing works in on regular financial markets. As you gave the example, most people think of it as buying an asset that they can use so while they repay the loan for it. So the whole concept behind Nolus actually is almost identical with lease on regular markets but it's transferred to Web3 and to DeFi in a manner that actually it provides users the ability to leverage their positions without the additional risk of let's say high liquidation triggers and the risk of not only losing their money but also having much greater exposure in terms of what they provide as a down payment or what normally crypto users think as of collateral when they take a loan. And yeah, these are the two main concepts here, that actually Nolus will provide much more assets that people can leverage their holdings with a much lower liquidation risk.
So part of the product is being able to have under collateralized lending. So can you describe how Nolus achieves this, and then typically, so I guess maybe coming back to what most people are used to, like most people are used to using a money market like Aave, like Compound, where collateralization ratios are somewhere in the 200%, right? So you put in, let's say, like you want to borrow USDC, like you put in like 100K worth of ETH, you're going to be able to borrow half of that in USDC or any other currency, right? That implies having an oracle that knows the prices of these assets all the time. And then there's a liquidation threshold where essentially if prices fluctuate to an extent where that collateralization ratio begins to be too small, then that initial the assets that were put up as collateral are sold at auction to pay off the borrowed assets to the lender. So that's like status quo. That's what most people are used to in crypto that use DeFi. How is Nolus different? Like describe the mechanics here, and perhaps also how a user would interact with Nolus.
Actually, it's fairly simple because we've twisted the model around. For example, in the example that you gave, you actually said you're providing 100K in terms of collateral in it for, and you can borrow up to let's say safe LTV around 60% out of it, meaning that you borrow 60,000 denominated in the currency that you're looking to borrow. What Nolus actually does is it gives you the same option, meaning that you can provide your collateral in ETH, let's say again in 100K. However, you can borrow 150K on top of this collateral. But the whole amount of the loan and the amount that you've provided, we call it a down payment because it's not actually only a collateral, are locked into a position, what we call a DeFi lease position, and both the down payment and the loan act as collateral on the whole position, meaning that the actual loan to value ratio is again around 60%. However, the liquidation risks are much lower compared to the current market average. For example, if you go to with an LTV, let's say on Compound or Aave or any other lender currently, you will be fully liquidated at a price drop of it with let's say 35% drop in it. On Nolus, what will actually happen is that around 40% drop in the price, a partial liquidation will trigger that will only collect us, I would say, a much smaller amount of the one that you've provided as down payment and taken as a loan, which will be the first one that that you are going to experience as user. The next one will be much higher in terms of the price drop, and I guess the last liquidation should appear somewhere around 70% in the drop of the actual price. So in that sense, Nolus is much safer compared to any other alternative. However, the funds that you take as a loan and you provide as collateral, aka down payment, are both locked into a smart contract until you fully repay the loan. But that's not actually bad, because there are real funds underneath every position, and those funds can be utilized throughout the whole duration of the loan.
Okay, so let's maybe just give an example here. So for example, let's go back to the ETH example. So we put up, say, 100,000 in, well, let's talk about Atom, because we're talking about a Cosmos chain here. But let's say we put up 100K in Atom in collateral, and we want to borrow, Osmo, for instance. We can borrow up to 150K in Osmo. Is there yield generation that happens here such that we can repay that loan, or like what are the strategies here that a user would implement in order to repay that loan, or have a sort of, is it a self-repaying loan, or is the idea that you repay that loan through some other means?
So yeah, if we go with your example, if you kind of provide as a deposit 100K worth of Atom, you would and you want to enter an exposure on Osmo, let's say. Yeah, in the case of Nolus, there are lenders, right, and there are borrowers. Lenders provide stable coins only. So if you're a borrower, such as you're coming with 100K of Atom, you can borrow stable coins, right? Because that's the only option on the protocol. But
Okay.
What happens in the background is that through IBC and interchain accounts, these stable coins and your Atom deposit, they travel to Osmosis, which is would be the primary DEX at launch, and they would be both. And the Atom and the USDC would be swapped to Osmosis, right? So now you have like a position in Osmo tokens, and since we'll be also utilizing at launch liquid staking derivatives such as ST Atom and ST Osmo, you could liquid stake your Osmo position now that's in your basically your lease position, and you can earn from the yield because ST Osmo is exposed to the yield to the staking yield of Osmo. So if that yield is greater than the interest that you own, then you have like a self-repaying loan. That's how it works.
Okay, so you said something interesting here that I think is like a novel compared to other money markets, is that lenders can only provide USDC or stable coins, as lending assets. So as a borrower, I can only borrow stable coins. Is that right?
You are borrowing stable coins, but under the hood, there is a swap that is involved in every position opening that will swap the stable coins to the desired asset that you want to lever. So as Matu implied, you provide a down payment in Atom, you get stable coins out of the borrower's liquidity pools, lenders' liquidity pools, and both your down payment and the loan are then swapped into your Osmo position.
Right. Okay. And why is it such that only stable coins can be lent into, like what about this sort of credit account makes it such that only stable coins can be lent in?
So yeah, basically, when you lend stable coins and the borrower comes and borrows stables to be swapped to a desired asset, basically you lock the price of the asset, right? So you can use the appreciation afterwards to repay your loan, basically. Apart from what I also mentioned with this additional option of you, in some cases, relying on liquid staking derivatives and this additional yield. So this is like the reason. So in a sense, this kind of resembles a cross-chain margin long position of an asset, but with the added flexibility that asset in the position being used elsewhere. So being used for yield generation.
Right. Okay. So just walking back through this, one puts up a deposit in like Atom, for example. They're going to borrow USDC or some other stable coin, could be IST or any interchain stable coin. In the back end, there's they may want to actually be exposed to osmosis. The system will swap. We'll make a swap for osmosis, and then those osmo can be liquid stakes. They can be generating yield. That yield is paying back the loan, and then in the end, once the loan has been repaid, the user is left with essentially, that position, their initial deposit in Atom, for instance, and then also the position that they borrowed because they were able to repay that loan, but they've kept the initial borrowed position.
Actually, yeah, when the user repays, they get what's in the position, and that's the Osmo tokens in our example, right? So they provided Atom, but this Atom, together with the USDC borrowed, has been swapped. So basically, when you repay what you owe, you get the assets in the position, in a sense.
Seb, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah. So what are some of the particular issues that might come up here that don't typically come up in traditional lending markets as we know them in crypto? So are there any sort of like externalities that this type of leasing market creates that we don't see in other lending markets? And like one thing that I see, for instance, is that the assets themselves, as a user, like the assets themselves, they have to be in this contract at all times. Like you can't move them somewhere else. And so from a user experience perspective, that it's like a very different experience than being able to borrow funds and then invest in a SAFT or do whatever, right? So that's one thing. Are there any other sort of things that users should expect when using Nolus?
I guess the biggest downside is that they don't actually receive any type of loan that is available in their wallet right from opening their position. However, this is part of the model, and again, if we have to compare it with, say, perpetuals or margin trading on some centralized exchanges, they actually work the same way. You provide a sort of a down payment or a collateral, and you lever it up afterwards. However, in terms of what Nolus provides, it's pretty much a lot more on top of those entities, because there are actual tokens in every position that can be leveraged through different strategies. The one that we already talked about is just the one that we will be starting with. However, as long as the protocol can liquidate its position on time and don't incur loss for borrowers, we can utilize every single yield generating protocol that is available currently on Cosmos, and not only in Cosmos as well.
And it's the idea here for Nolus to also sort of propose strategies within the platform that allow for this yield generation, or are users free to compose their own yield generation strategies? How do you see that?
Yeah. So basically, if a user would be able to use every strategy out there, that wouldn't be safe for the protocol. First, the protocol would need to allow that a certain position be used in a certain strategy. And the cool thing about Cosmos in general is that it's heavily governance focused, right? So you could pretty much let the community decide and discuss whether a strategy is meaningful to be added and would be safe to the protocol. And who is the one who's taking those decisions? Those are the NOS stakers, the ones that are providing security to the network. So it's pretty much a choice of the community to whether to add such an option and whether it makes sense.
Okay, cool. Yeah, which brings me to my next point. So Nolus is an app chain. It's a sovereign chain that will have a validator set and on-chain governance. It also has the NLS token, which is the governance token. Can you talk a little bit about what other utility functions this token might have? Does it have any function also in terms of generating yields for users that are leveraging the platform? Or are they generating yields in NLS token? Will they be like yield farming on this token in addition to that? And how do you anticipate this? Maybe we can talk a little bit about the governance later, but I'm curious about governance. And governance has been it's useful, I think, for making certain types of decisions. Other types of decisions, perhaps, when analyzing complex DeFi strategies, maybe community governance may not be the best way to determine whether or not a strategy is safe for the platform. So how do you anticipate that? How do you anticipate that sort of playing out in the future?
Okay,
so I just want to one, but yeah.
Let me talk about the utility of Nolus, and Mato can go with the governance afterwards. So the whole concept of first having our own app chain was to have a token that can actually be more useful to the protocol in many different layers. For example, the way we've designed our layer 1 is that it actually, on every transaction done on it, we extract part of the fees towards the protocol, and this is one revenue stream that has been created for Nolus, and this revenue stream will actually incentivize different participants on the Nolus ecosystem. For example, if you lend stablecoins to the protocol, you get rewards in NLS as well, because from this revenue stream that I just mentioned, there will be enough, I would say, enough liquidity in NOS that will come naturally from every transaction done on the protocol. For every lease that interest is paid, and there will be a small revenue stream again that will again have the one thing that it will be doing, and it will be buying back the NOS token from the open market, and again distributing it towards different parties that are participating in the ecosystem. And last but not least, actual stakers on the blockchain will receive much better rates in terms of what they're generating as yield on their stable coins, and much better rates or what they're receiving as I would say interest for borrowing DeFi lease positions.
Yeah, and to contribute to and go back to the governance factor. So yeah, NOS stakers are providing security to the network, and they are the ones that are basically voting on various proposals that are coming up. But it's not like the all possible yield strategies are there to be just voted yes or no. These still need to be implemented first, and of course discussed in detail before basically a new smart contract, for instance, is deployed on the chain. So if we outline it that way, every step of the whole of the chain's development is dependent on governance, but you still need to kind of include that functionality beforehand. And, the power of governances is there, but still.
Yeah. Do you see perhaps like sub-DAOs being a relevant mechanism for, for instance, like having a committee that would review DeFi strategies, that would be tasked with effectively testing DeFi strategies before they get implemented on the protocol? Or do you think that, like on-chain governance with all the validators and staker and delegators, of course, is like the right way to implement strategies at the protocol level?
So basically, what you're suggesting is smaller committees that are beforehand kind of testing out a given strategy.
Yeah, like it could be like a sub-DAO, like it could be like it could be like the token holders, for instance. I mean, like, the Cosmos chain has been talking about this, for instance, for like in the context of Atom 2.0, and like Juno and other chains also do similar things, where you effectively have governance rights over electing some sort of board that that makes decisions on behalf of the community for like very specific or very very specific things, where deep understanding and knowledge and like industry experience is necessary. Is this something that you guys have considered in terms, or that you would consider, such that the safety of the protocol is maybe held in the hands of experts rather than I don't know. I mean, like there may be benefits also to just having degens voting on what strategies are implemented.
This is definitely something that we consider and we address deeply. So of course, it's not, as I mentioned, it's not like degens simply voting yes or no to include something that is there. It first needs to be thoroughly reviewed, and you can of course integrate such a committee and have basically those degens vote on, first of all, yes, that committee is kind of capable of taking such a decision for us, and of course from there on you can pretty much kind of define stricter steps in the process of from the whole idea generation about a certain new generating strategy to it being live on chain. So it's certainly an option.
Cool. And so what kind of strategies have we talked about? Liquid staking and those, that as a yield generation strategy, it seems like a very safe strategy, and in many ways probably a very profitable one, since many chains, especially after they launch, have fairly high yields on staking. What other kinds of strategies, or more complex strategies, can we expect to be implemented on Nolus, either at launch or later on? Like, as a DeFi strategist, what are you thinking of in terms of like maximizing returns? And also I'm interested, how you consider cross-chain strategies to be playing a part here, because I think that cross-chain strategies are probably where there's a higher risk, but there's certainly also potentially higher expected returns.
So first of all, in terms of launching an MVP, yes, liquid staking derivatives would be there at launch in terms of ST Atom and ST Osmo. So this would be like the only yield generating option that we have at launch ready. And in terms of additional strategies, yes, it's first of all, this true cross-chain vision of Cosmos is still at its beginning, and we're basically one of the first protocols to actually materialize that vision via IBC and interchain accounts. And if there needs, for example, there could be certain liquidity provision, but as a strategy. But those are simply ideas that can be discussed in details, and various risk parameters can be also outlined as well to each strategy, because it's in our model, it's pretty important that the protocol has access to the funds that are in a lease position. So if the strategy itself has a certain lockup period in the background, that's problematic. For example, that's just a pure, generally speaking, concept. So.
Yeah, but and let's not forget that DeFi on Cosmos is relatively young, and it's still currently heavily developing. So I guess more options will come to mind once more protocols are launch their products. There are a lot of DeFi products that are currently being developed, and we are looking forward to start working with them. I just want to point out here one interesting thing that Meto mentioned for the design pattern that we have taken, and it actually utilizes heavily interchain accounts, which is, I guess, the broader vision of what Cosmos should be communicating with. Different Cosmos chains should be communicating with one another. And I think the way we've designed Nolus is in a manner that it can relatively easy onboard integration with different chains and provide additional value for the chains, as well as the chain itself will provide additional value for Nolus as well. So we are kind of a model that can work in a symbiotic manner with not only permissionless L1s, but rather permissioned ones as well.
Very cool. One thing that I was thinking about, just as you were speaking earlier, Metodi, is the asynchronicity of cross-chain transfers and basically message passing between Cosmos chains. Does that what kind of implications does that have on the strategies that you might implement, right? Because if a liquidation needs to happen and assets get locked up or are tied up in a series of cross-chain transfers that are taking longer to unravel, how does that affect the liquidation process, and are there mechanisms there? Because with Ethereum, we don't really have this problem, right? You can have a position and you can initiate a transaction and you can unravel a bunch of different positions that are locked in different contracts in the same transaction. With Cosmos, it's a little bit different.
So as you mentioned, basically the chain of events that are happening in a true cross-chain world can be quite long, and this of course increases the time until let's say a liquidation, right? So you're basically in that case your oracle should be responsible to take into account this basically time period as well, and not just let's say the price that it's at the moment. So you could pretty much twist that, and actually in our system, in our oracle model, it doesn't take into account, for example, the quoted price of an asset now, but the price that would happen after a swap is performed, for instance. So you could pretty much use that as an assumption first, and then build up on top your security model.
Interesting. Yeah. And are you considering also, obviously, IBC transfers seem obvious, or, IBC connections, but you're also considering using Axelar, for instance, to go get yield on, Ethereum or on Solana or on other platforms. Is this ultimately like the longer term vision here, is to be able to interoperate with, all sorts of ecosystems, given the interoperability solutions, of course?
Yeah, that's the broader vision that we're aiming at, and however, we want to start with let's say first integrate all the native Cosmos chains that we can communicate with and create additional value for Nolus, and again for the chains as well. But on the long run, when general message passing that Axelar are providing goes through, let's say, a more mature state, we'll be looking to start the same type of communication with EVM chains as well. Yeah, this is our broader vision of how cross-chain communication should happen, and we are really bullish on IBC and general message passing in general, because this is inherently going to be the next TCP/IP protocols that we use on a daily basis, and we don't even know that we are using them.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, currently that might, that might cause a problem, because transfers and message passing between, say, Ethereum and Cosmos can take a while. I know that there are protocols that are building on top of Axelar, like Squid, that are trying to improve the time there by basically having intermediaries that take up the risk while that transfer is being settled on Ethereum. This was also the case, I think, for Connext in the case of Nomad. But yeah, the asynchronicity just increases, I think, once you start going over those boundaries. But I think certainly those things will get better over time. There will be like layers of abstraction that separate, the end user, or at least the sort of transaction that's happening, that is being settled, and the underlying, state that might update a little bit later, because there will be, parties that are sitting at the intersection of these two chains and settling that transaction and taking on the risk. This is all really cool. I can't wait to get my hands on this product and start using it. You mentioned that you will be supporting ST assets, so Stride staked, liquid staked assets. Are you also that, I suppose it's a partnership you have with Stride, or you have an integration with them? Are you also considering other liquid staked assets like Quicksilver or any of the native liquid staked assets? I know that like on Evmos, they want to do their own liquid staked assets, and I think other chains, like, well, obviously, Osmosis has their semi liquid stake asset with the super fluid staking. Is this something that you would consider for the future, to diversify, the types of liquid staked assets you have, and what would be the benefits of doing that?
Yes, of course. So first of all, the benefits would be that it would be reach out to more communities, more people that are relying on those assets. But you need to take also into account the liquidity that's in the pools, right? So currently, Stride has ST Atom and ST Osmo are the richest in terms of liquidity. So, and that is pretty important for a given lease position, because basically they, if the price, of course, drops, it would need to be liquidated, and the more liquidity you have, the safer it is. And of course, once these other assets mature in liquidity, and they would consider adding them to the system, because, yeah, as mentioned, liquidity depth in particular is important.
Great, yeah, no, it'd be great to see other liquid staking providers and other integrations as well. I'm sure there'll be many more in the future. Let's talk a little bit about the let's get into the technical bits a little bit. So Nolus is CosmWasm chain. I was looking at the GitHub earlier, like all of the logic is built in CosmWasm. As developers building a blockchain product, maybe just talk a little bit about why you decided to build this on Cosmos, and as a Cosmos chain, what were the benefits of leveraging CosmWasm over building your own Go Cosmos SDK modules? And I kind of already know what the answer is going to be here, but just reinforcing my CosmWasm bullishness.
Yeah, I guess the short answer for CosmWasm is Rust. I mean, it's a pretty powerful instrument, pretty powerful language, and combined with a Wasm VM and CosmWasm in our scenario, it's a really, I would say, secure but rather versatile option to build smart contracts on it. I pretty much like to give one example here when we talk about Solidity, that it's on Solidity, it's relatively easy to build smart contracts, but it's relatively hard to build secure smart contracts. So this is not the case with CosmWasm, because it's the other way around. It's relatively hard to go through the compiler and compile your smart contracts. However, once compiled, it's much more safer compared to any, I would say, maybe 2 out of 5 contracts on built on Solidity. And regarding this stack, I guess part of our team has a knack for Rust from one point, from the other is that we could completely separate the core business logic from the blockchain itself, and it can live on a let's say a second layer on top of the blockchain, and which creates an asynchronous development of both the blockchain and the smart contracts, aka the business logic on top of it. So this was our main driver for choosing this stack. As I mentioned, we're pretty bullish on CosmWasm. We're also bullish on some of the new VMs that are coming out and gaining traction in the last year or so.
Like which ones?
Like, for example, Move. My personal view is that Move can be a really powerful virtual machine.
Cool. And yeah, regarding the choice of building this as a Cosmos Appchain, that's, it might be an obvious choice to, people in Cosmos, but it's not an obvious choice to, I think just like people generally building who are looking for a platform to build on crypto, because there are so many, alternatives. And I talk to teams all the time that are, looking to build, like they have an idea for a product and they're like, okay, well, we're going to build it on Ethereum because that's where the liquidity and the users are, or we're going to build it on Solana because it's fast, but like Cosmos is not an obvious choice. I'm like, unless you've been Cosmos pilled, it's not always obvious. What led you to want to build this as an app chain?
So yeah, you could of course deploy a money market such as ours on a general purpose blockchain, right? But you would pretty much lose on some of the benefits that you would have by being your own app chains. For example, your token, for instance, your token is the one that in the case of an app chain, it provides security to the app chain itself, but it also can gain benefits from the underlying app, like the app on top of it, like on the money market on top of it. So in our case, for instance, NLS takers, as mentioned, they don't only get staking rewards, but they get also benefits for the money market itself, right? And also, being an app chain, you don't have to share block space with other applications. So we all know in bull markets, when let's say pretty popular NFT projects begins minting, it can get pretty ugly for the chain itself and for the users of the other apps there. So that's also another benefit that one could have with an app chain. And with an app chain, of course, you can also control pretty much various parameters. For instance, we've tweaked the minting module, which is responsible for the inflation rate, and also we've introduced a custom module such as the tax module that introduces additional revenue stream for the token itself. So it's a pretty powerful tool. Environment.
Yeah. Do you think that this is a question that I think, it's not obvious yet, but there's this idea that app chains are essentially, like app chains are possible now because the cost of securing an app chain is still relatively low. So there's some estimates out there, but it's somewhere in the like 3 to 5 million per year in in cost of infrastructure and staking rewards and stuff. Like if you consider like what it costs to run a validator set, I feel like over time, as the cost of security increases, because these blockchains will become more and more valuable, right? There's going to be like more value on these chains. Cost of security will increase, and running an app chain will be reserved to like a few very large ecosystem players. And you could make the analogy that in the early 2000s, it may have made sense for, a medium-sized business to like build their own data center in the basement of their office. But as the cost of cloud computing came down, and the security, the sort of like security risks associated to running your own data center and the cost associated to that, as those economics didn't make sense anymore, it made sense to start moving to cloud. And that's when most companies, small and large, started moving over to cloud. I feel like app chains are going to probably suffer the same fate, right? So like right now, it makes sense to launch your own app chain because we've got interchain security coming, and like running a validator is fairly cheap. But over time, that might not be the case anymore. What's your long-term vision here for, sort of staying a sovereign app, remaining sovereign? Like, well, first of all, like, do you agree with this thesis? And then also, what would be in that case your like long-term vision for keeping that sovereignty and effectively justifying remaining an app chain? Because I mean, you could have built this as like, a roll up or like some other form of application that leverages some form of shared security, but that has lower cost to you as a chain, but sovereignty trade-offs, etc.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We could have actually deployed our contracts on every compatible chain that is currently available. However, Meto pointed out a couple of things that we found that are pretty essential for the design of the money market that we're currently building. On top of that, I just want to add that other benefits of having our own app chain is that we have the full, I would say, we don't have any boundaries in terms of how the technology can scale from this point onwards. Meaning, because for example, we heavily utilize IBC, as we already mentioned, and for the time being, the only way to create an interchain account is if you have your own network and utilize the ICA modules the way we do it with our smart contracts. Because if we get deeper in this, actually our smart contracts are doing the heavy lifting for creating interchain accounts to different networks. And this will be pretty helpful in terms of that we can pretty much extend this functionality to different places and different chains on Cosmos and going out again of the Cosmos ecosystem. And I guess this is one of the main reasons why we opted this for this design. In terms of maintaining our own validator set, you're absolutely correct. It's not cheap, and it's relatively hard to set a good, I would say, a good validator set and to maintain it because it's costly. But however, because being an app chain, we actually don't need 100 plus validators active on our network, because the load of transactions won't be that big, and we will, for example, in the beginning, have a much smaller set that should be sufficient for the system to run and have a decent amount of decentralization there. And we can keep this set of let's say 25 or 40 validators in the next years to come while the network itself matures. One of the things that we actually thought about having this on the long run and making it sustainable is actually baked in the protocol itself. As we already talked about the different revenue streams that we will be introducing from day one for the chain, think of it as that every new let's say yield strategy that we whitelist on Nolus, or every new integration we do with Nolus, we will introduce a new revenue stream for the protocol itself that will gradually create a treasury, and this treasury can be afterwards subsidizing different parties, not only participants on the Nolus protocol itself. However, it can subsidize the validator set as well.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And I mean, of course, like having being your own app chain that offers, you know, several, like lots of benefits also in terms of you know, in terms of customizing the entire stack, like being highly vertically integrated, economies of scale and everything. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see in the future, you know, of all the app chains that have launched in the last couple of years and those that will launch also in the next few years, I'm sure, you know, how many of those are able to you know, generate significant enough revenue to remain sustainable. And I think that DeFi is probably the best candidate for those for chains to remain like profitable and sort of remain app chains. I think there are lots of app chains that probably will sort of either have to move over to some sort of shared security roll-up infrastructure if they want to remain, you know, if they want to stay online, or will sort of how to put this, you know, especially for smart contract chains, like general purpose smart contract chains. I think a lot of those general smart contract chains will become app chains for their biggest use case. And so because there's just, you know, there are so many smart contract chains that are launching that, you know, have very minimal amount of differentiation, right? Like one might have like some small feature, or one might be CosmWasm, one might be EVM. And in the end, I think they're just probably going to revert back to, you know, being an app chain for their biggest use case and trying to you know, become profitable there. But, you know, as a DeFi platform, I think that you're in a very different category, and certainly like it makes sense to be an app chain. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the roadmap and what are the next steps? When can we expect Nolus to launch? And yeah.
I can happily say very, very soon, as we are in the final stage of merging our latest iteration of development of our smart contracts. There will be a certain period of time that once merged to our testnet, we will expose the whole functionality of the Nolus DeFi lease to users who are interested in testing how it will work, how the actual web application will handle the DeFi leases, what will the UI be there, and of course we'll be running a lot of testing in a, I would say, almost production ready environment. And if everything goes as planned, we will be launching fairly soon.
Great. So 2 to 3 weeks. So no, but yeah. Well, if you wanna stay tuned,
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, you should definitely follow Nolus on Twitter. It is what is your Twitter handle? Nolus Protocol.
It's Nolus Protocol. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll put the links down in the show notes for anyone who's interested. Yeah, well, guys, thanks for coming on. It's been really interesting to learn more about Nolus, and I hope that our live stream viewers and our audience are also excited about this product. And yeah, good luck on as you move towards the launch.
Thanks for having us and for the nice wishes.
Thanks, Seb. Looking forward to speaking with you again in front of a live audience again.
Yeah, well, as we wrap up here, I also want to thank our listeners for tuning in and for following and subscribing to the podcast. If you enjoy this content, please consider sticking with us. We are live on Evmos, Quicksilver, Juno, and now on Osmosis. And I would like to invite both of you to speak at, well, at least, I would like to invite someone from Nolus to speak at Nebular Summit, which is the conference that we're organizing this summer. We'll be announcing the dates very soon, and it's in Paris. And so, we'll make sure that we'll make sure you get an invitation to that. And also to our listeners, do follow Nebular Builders on Twitter, because we're going to be announcing the dates next week. In fact, we're announcing the dates on Wednesday. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.